Welcome back, old sport. We are approaching the end of F. Scott Fitzgerald's classic, The Great Gatsby. A lot has happened over the course of the last 3 chapters, and we've learned some interesting details about Jay Gatsby's past. Of course, many questions remain. Will Daisy leave Tom? Will Nick and Jordan build a life together? And what's going to happen to George and Myrtle Wilson? And what about Jay Gatsby? He's come so far, and he's almost got everything he dreamed of. Now that he and Daisy have rekindled their love, will he get the one thing he's dreamed of most of all? Well, we're about to get some answers. It's time to drive full speed ahead into the 3 final climactic chapters of the book. But before we do, let's take a look at the video agenda. First, we'll travel back through chapters 4, 5, and 6 for a little review. Then, we'll take a slight detour to discuss foreshadowing, symbolism, and motifs. Then finish up with a discussion of the American dream, something that seemed to weigh heavily on Fitzgerald's mind. Okay, buckle up and let's get ready to finish our journey with the modernist masterpiece known as The Great Gatsby. Over the past week, we saw Gatsby and Nick travel to New York for lunch. Gatsby's less than cautious driving led to them being stopped by the police in the Valley of Ashes. But he flashed that white card from the police commissioner and he was permitted to go along his merry way. During the ride, Gatsby talks about his past, but the details seem a little hard to believe, and we're still left with so many questions about Gatsby's past. Then, he takes Nick to meet Meyer Wolfsheim. The guy is definitely involved in some shady stuff. Gambling, alcohol, illegal activities at the time. More questions about what Gatsby is up to. Next, Jordan gives Nick a little background about the romantic relationship between Gatsby and Daisy 5 years earlier. Gatsby went off to war. She said she'd wait for him, then she married Tom. But she cried just before the wedding. So much emotion. That brings us to chapter 5, when Nick sets up the little tea party rendezvous for Gatsby and Daisy. First, it's storming. Then, it's drizzling. Then the sun comes out. There's a lot of weather in chapter 5. Anyway, Daisy is super impressed with Gatsby's lifestyle, especially his shirts. And the chapter ends with Nick realizing he's the third wheel and slipping out quietly. And finally, we reach chapter 6, when Nick does the modernist thing where he breaks the timeline by jumping back to the past, and he fills us in on Gatsby's actual history. We learn he started life as James Gatz, and he worked for a guy named Dan Cody, who made his wealth from copper. Gatsby was supposed to inherit some money from Cody, but that didn't work out. However, maybe that made Gatsby all that much more determined to make his own fortune, because that's what he did. And now he finds himself in the company of Tom Buchanan and some of his old money friends. They make an insincere dinner invitation that Gatsby doesn't realize is insincere, and while he's getting ready to go with them, they leave. So rude. If only Gatsby had seen this coming. If only he had access to the literary devices we readers have. Devices like foreshadowing, symbolism, and motifs. We're going to take a moment here to talk about 3 literary devices Fitzgerald used in this book. First, there's foreshadowing. That's when authors hint at a plot point that hasn't happened yet. Let me give you an example. Maybe during the rising action of a story, a character has some papers ripped out of their hands by a sudden gust of wind. Then, at the climax of the story, a tornado whisks away the worldly belongings of the same character. That little incident with the wind earlier in the story gave readers a hint at something bigger that would happen later in the story. So let's review some events. When Nick first sees Gatsby, he's reaching out for a green light. And then Gatsby just sort of disappears into the darkness. There's a big party that ends with a car accident and a smaller party in New York where Tom becomes violent with Myrtle. Or what about when Gatsby gets stopped by police on his way to New York? Which of these events might foreshadow something that's coming in the last chapters? Keep them in mind as you continue reading. And let's not forget about symbolism. The green light, the Valley of Ashes, the eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg, Gatsby's mansion, automobiles. Now that you've had time to think about it, what do you think these symbols represent? Has their meaning intensified over the course of the story? Has their meaning changed? And what do you make of the motifs that run through the story? You know, like parties, weather, color, and geography. How have they helped to shape the tone, the emotional climate, the theme? Have they developed, changed, intensified? Continue to watch for the use of these motifs as the story progresses. Thinking about literary devices like foreshadowing, symbolism, and motifs might seem like something extra, something separate from the plot. But actually, these devices help carry the plot and deliver a powerful message. Rather than being extra, they're essential to fully understanding Fitzgerald's work. So give them lots of thought as you read. There's one more thing I want you to think about during this week's reading, and that's the American Dream. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Just what do those famous words from the Declaration of Independence imply? Maybe that you don't need to be part of a certain family line, like royalty, to have a good life? Or that you have the freedom to pursue your dreams, no matter who you are? Well, that's so inspiring. And yet, it's complicated. Back when those inspiring words were written, if you weren't white and you weren't male, you actually did not have the freedoms to pursue your dreams. And if you started life poor and your education was limited, there were some practically insurmountable obstacles that stood between you and your dream. But for now, let's leave 1776 behind, fast forward to the Roaring '20s, and consider the Jazz Age version of the American Dream. In a perfect world, if everyone had the freedom to pursue and achieve your dreams, what would that look like? For Gatsby, the American Dream is about achieving wealth, extreme wealth. It's about reviving a relationship with the woman of his dreams, and the assurance that he has climbed the ladder of success to become a part of that group of old money people who have had the upbringing and the opportunities that he has not been given in his life. So, how does that work out for him? Is he able to achieve the American Dream? Is it even possible for him? What about people like Tom and Daisy? Are they actually living the American Dream? Well, I guess your answers to those questions depends on your definition of the American Dream. When you get to the end of The Great Gatsby, Nick is going to go into a bit of that modernist subjectivity and stream of consciousness. He's going to give his thoughts about the American Dream. Before you get to that part, I want you to give some serious thought to what the American Dream means to you. But first, let's take a look at your lesson agenda. After this video, you'll get started on your PDF readings and activities, and you'll keep cruising along in similar fashion all the way through day 4 when you'll finish the novel. On day 5, you'll answer reflection questions, refresh your writing skills, and then you'll write a summary of Nick Carraway's conclusions about the American Dream. After that, you'll complete this Jazz Age journey with your lesson assessment. Start your engines, time travelers. It's time to hit the road once more and journey to the 1920s. You're about to make one last visit to the world of Jay Gatsby. Have a good trip, old sport.